the Colosseum.
Listen, I don't know how this is gonna sound. I'm kind of sick, and I didn't check how the sound is gonna, well, sound. So we are swinging it. Also, don't judge my microphone holder, okay? This is too flimsy to hold it. Back to the video. The year is 2024, and after 24 years of waiting, we finally have it, ladies. Yes, I said ladies. This movie is for ladies. Hunky men fighting for their life falling apart and them becoming even hotter. I mean, come on. This is made for women. I don't care what the men say. This one is for girls. Also, I'm filming this on the International Women's Day, so, you know, the gods have spoken, I guess. Anyways, so, for 99.9% of the people watching, which is my family and my friends, they know that I study archaeology and history, aka I am a class A nerd. Quite literally. I decided why not to make a video about what the hell actually happened during the period that this movie is talking about. And I sincerely didn't check if there is any video like this, which there probably is quite a few by now. So I'm just gonna add onto the pile with what I know about this period. And my closest friends and allies know that my Roman Empire is the Roman Empire. And honestly, no matter what day it is in Rome, there is no less drama than the day before. Let's start. The movie loosely picks up after Commodus's death. No, baby, you're too hot to go. Don't go. Honestly, listen, I remember when I was 8 years old, first time seeing Commodus on screen, and I had my awakening. I knew exactly what I wanted in a man. Am I not merciful? Ish. So, Gladiator 2 picks off after his death, and it's a quite turbulent time in history when we look at it. It is called the Year of the Five Emperors, and honestly, it is as fucking chaotic as it fucking sounds. Basically, at that time, Rome didn't know who was in charge, and I think that at one point, all the, you know, normal folk just didn't give a shit. They were just like, make us stable, I don't care. Just let me do my little folk stuff, I guess. I don't know what they were doing. Oh. If the name The Year of the Five Emperors did not give you a clue, it was quite a turbulent time. In 193 AD, after Commodus was sadly assassinated, there was a scramble for power. Multiple people claimed the throne, and honestly, like, make a reality show out of this. The chaotic time was like a real bloody mess of military fighting for dominance, and Gladiator 2 for sure plays onto that, as we can see another bloody sequel, quite literally. Commodus was quite unpopular, if you maybe didn't get it by the movies before, and he was known for quite eccentric and cruel rule. All of this egotism and stuff like that created quite an imbalance across the Roman Empire. Because his death created a power vacuum, and because he had no clear successor in his place, this left like a rapid succession of emperors that were vying for power. We have Pertinax in 193 AD. After Commodus's death, the Senate declared Pertinax, I hate his name, Pertinax, a respected senator and general at his time, as an emperor. However, his reign was short-lived. Surprise, surprise. He attempted to reform the empire, but his attempts were not really popular with his Praetorian Guard that was supposed to, you know, protect the goddamn dude. He wasn't very popular with them, so they, like, in the March of that same year. So, after him come Didius Julianus. My roommate just came back home and I got shy. Oh, if you see this, hi. Yeah, I live with people now. You're gonna hear a lot of talking because you're right next to me. Hope you don't find it weird, and hope you like the end product. After the previous dude's death, the Praetorian Guard, if I'm even pronouncing correctly, Praetorian Guard, yes, auctioned off the throne to the highest bidder. And this Didius dude, who was already quite a wealthy senator, got it. If you thought the previous guy was unpopular, this one was even less. He was basically the puppet of the Praetorians. His rule lasted only about 9 weeks. So, he was overthrown and executed. Yeah, the lifespan of the emperors was not really long. After him comes one of my favorite emperors, Septimus Severus. Not quite literally after him, but he's the end guy. Amid all this chaos, Septimus Severus, who was already a powerful general and the governor of Pannonia, which is modern-day in Hungary, was declared emperor by his legions. He was a seasoned military leader, so he knew what he was doing with his sword. And, you know, it takes quite a lot of brain power to lead legions, which meant that he had quite a few marbles in his head, unlike a lot of the other emperors. When I say not quite directly after Didius, that means that there was another power struggle against him. Should I even say this? I will say this. It's his name. You know, like, I can't... It's his name. Pescennius Niger and Claudius Albinus. Those two dudes were generals as well. They also claimed the right to the imperial throne at the same time as Snape over here. What happens when you have a power struggle? Civil war, which is what ensued, and spoiler alert, Snape won. It was not really that hard. He was way better than them, so. Our guy Severus had 2 sons with his wife Julia Domna. The psychotic hotties from the movie Geta and Caracalla. But unlike in fiction, they were not twins. They were 11 months apart, with, of course, Caracalla being the older one. He had plans quite a long time to have his sons as joint rulers because his father, Marcus Aurelius, was also a... He was not his father. What am I talking about? As we can get a glimpse in the movies, the relationship between the 2 brothers was not really good. There are some wholesome moments in the movie where it's like, oh, you know, cute. But no, it was actually far from it. It was like full-blown hatred. And finally, after Severus's death in 211 AD, this happened. Caracalla, the elder of the 2, he was ambitious and ruthless, and he wanted the empire all for himself. Geta, on the other hand, was still a bit insane, but he was more moderate, and that caused a big rift between the 2 brothers. They were quite different. The conflict between them was so intense that it ended up in open conflicts in front of the court. According to several records, Caracalla tried to off Geta quite a few times, and he kind of failed. But he ultimately succeeded. Spoiler alert. Well, not really. If you watch the movie, not really. In the same year that the emperors became the emperors, Geta was assassinated. Caracalla had too much, and according to some records, he ordered the assassination right in as Geta was seeking refuge in their mother's arms. So, yeah, poor woman. After Geta's death, Caracalla tried to erase him from history. It's in Rome, that was called Damnatio Memoriae. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. I probably am. I'm probably not. I don't know. Caracalla, instead of just erasing imagery and stuff like that, as we can see on a lot of artifacts, he also killed almost everybody loyal to Caracalla, which was 20,000 men. It was a massacre. As Caracalla ruled alone, he was known for his brutality, tyranny, and various military campaigns. It was not really peaceful time. He also brought in a new law that allowed all free men in Rome to become citizens, which is one of his major reforms. And honestly, it was not done out of goodwill. It was just done for tax revenue because all recognized Roman citizens had to pay tax. Why are there sharks in the Colosseum? According to records, there were naval reenactments in the Colosseum itself, but they'd fill it with water, they would bring in ships, yada yada yada, look cool. Honestly, it was a great feat for the time, but there were no sharks whatsoever. There were interesting animals, but no sharks. They had no means to transport the sharks into the Colosseum, keep them alive, and then chuck them back. And honestly, even if they did, I don't think that they would be concerned with the ethical side of it. And honestly, once you dig into the real juices of gladiators and emperors, and at that time, you really don't need sharks, to be honest, or rhinos. Like, what? Okay, listen. I know that the producer, director, whatever, he is not very fond of historical accuracy, and he never really allowed it to step in the way of a good storytelling, which honestly you can't really be mad because both movies were amazing from my standpoint. But you don't need rhinos, you don't need sharks. You had gladiators that were fighting with tigers and lions. Was that not enough? There was quite a few exotical animals, and if I'm wrong, correct me, but I think there were some rhino depiction things, but no riding of the rhinos. Color of people. Here comes the juicy part. One of the things I was glad to see in the movie was the depiction of people of color in high standing in Rome. It was not as common as people would like it to be, but it was not unheard of. Our guy Severus Snape over here, he was a man of color himself. He was from modern-day Libya, so he was North African, with his father having Arab roots, and his wife Julia Domna, or Julia Domna, I don't know how to pronounce it. She was from the Arab roots as well. Rome was a massive empire at the time, and just because you were born as a son of an emperor didn't mean you'd be one, as we've seen by numerous examples. Now let's talk about, well, the main theme of this movie, gladiators. Did they really fight to the death all the time, or was there something more? And obviously, it's Rome, people. Of course there is something more. It's not always as black as white as people in the Hollywood make it seem. In reality, gladiators were like, the modern athletes. They were famous, sometimes even rich, and they had a somewhat of a social status, considering that most of them were slaves or prisoners of wars, but not all the time. But we shall talk about that later. As I said, majority of them were slaves or prisoners of wars, and their social status was considered lower than of a free Roman citizen. There were some volunteers, auctorati, but those volunteers chose to become gladiators in the arena, and there were several reasons, such as promise of prize money, fame, or, a potential gain. Gladiator fights were a part of monera, which were public games. Most of the time they were staged to honor the dead, and they were a key part of the Roman Empire, like religious and political life. The events were mostly held in large amphitheaters, which obviously the most famous one was this old boy right here. These spectacles were not always some entertainment, but it was a way for emperors and nobility to gain favor with public by giving them free entertainment. Gladiators were also highly trained fighters. They were not just random people thrown into a pit. While often portrayed as just fighting for their lives, gladiators were established athletes. They underwent rigorous training in special schools that were known as ludi, and we see a character who was a mentor, and we can assumed that he was a part of a ludi. These schools were run by experienced trainers, and gladiators were, taught a various amount of techniques on how to end a life. But contrary to popular belief, they were not always fighting to the death. Many fights ended with the losing gladiator yielding by lifting a finger or a hand, and a referee or the sponsor of the games would decide the fate of the person that surrendered. If a gladiator fought well, he might be spared, depending on, the favor with the masses in the Colosseum, or if he just has a lot of potential. The thumbs up, thumbs down gesture that we see in almost all of ancient Rome movies is actually a modern misinterpretation. Roman audience mostly would use a gesture pollice verso, which is quite literally translated as turning the thumb, or other signs to indicate their preference. And as I said, successful gladiators could become quite big celebrities, and sometimes they would come to a point where they had to be shielded from the public so they are not used for anybody else's gain. Just like today's celebrities. While rare, female gladiators did exist, and they were known as gladiatrices, and the existence of these badass women is attested in ancient texts. The thing with these women is that these fights were often done as a novelty act for a special event, and were often like doing minor games when it came to the gladiator fights. But they existed, and that's a point, I guess. Gladiator games gradually declined with the rise of Christianity, as Christian morals didn't see human death as entertainment, and I agree. The last recorded gladiator game was in 404 AD under Emperor Honorius. That sounded very Swedish. Honorius. Afterwards, the act was fully banned. Talk about a buzzkill, am I right? But let's not forget that not everything in this movie is actually historical fact, because it is historical fiction. And that leads me to our new protagonist, Lucius. Lucius is the son of Maximus, who isn't really a who's who in the history. And Lucius, for a fact, does not exist in actual history. But his character does echo quite a lot of instability in Rome. We can see that Lucius could have been inspired by an actual Lucius in history called Lucius Verus. He was a Roman emperor who ruled alongside his adoptive brother Marcus Aurelius, when we all know who he is. He ruled from 161 to 169 AD, and he was a very good military leader. To the point that after his death, the Senate gave him the title of Divine Verus, which is, kudos for that. Lucius was an adopted brother of his co-emperor Marcus Aurelius, who was also an adoptive son. Marcus Aurelius was a philosopher emperor, and Lucius was more on a military side. He was, relaxed and a bit less disciplined as well, which you would kind of think would contradict his military victories. And the thing is, the contrast between them made a really functioning dynamic, because unlike some other co-emperors we've seen, they actually kind of got along, and the reason for Lucius's death was not his brother's hand. He just, he got sick, possibly from the plague, and he died. And his co-emperorship with Marcus Aurelius was significant in Roman history, and they were actually the first co-emperors. Unfortunately, Lucius is not well remembered, which is kind of sad, because he had some military victories, and Marcus Aurelius often overshadows him. In the first movie, we see that Lucius's mother, Lucilla, who is the sister of Commodus, is the daughter of Marcus Aurelius, one of his many children actually. And in that first movie, she is depicted as having this romantic relationship, you know, where Lucius is actually the son of Maximus. Which kind of doesn't make sense. It has irked everybody, including me. But that's a whole another story. Lucilla is shown as trying to protect her son Lucius from the corruption of Emperor Commodus, but in historical reality, Lucilla's life was more tumultuous, and she eventually was involved in a conspiracy of assassination of Commodus. Talk about backstabbing, like really, sibling rivalry was something else back in the day. However, her role in the historical narrative was more political, and obviously there is no record of any involvement with Maximus because he is fictional. Even though the movie mixes up fact and fiction, the real power struggle behind it is what really makes this story compelling, because this political domino effect that has happened during that era, I mean, as you can see, it was too juicy not to tap into even in the modern time. The reign of Geta and Caracalla was marked by political instability at its finest. There were civil conflicts and tensions within the imperial family itself, as we have already noted, which everything contributed to significant challenges for their rule. As we said, both brothers were made co-emperors by their father, which proved to be a horrible mistake. The biggest political problems was the conflict itself, and it did not just affect the family, it affected the whole goddamn empire. Caracalla was like the guy who just had to be the boss. It's like an episode of Real Housewives of Ancient Rome. It's horrible. It's basically the Roman version of, if you can't beat them, just delete them from history. After the murder of Geta, Caracalla was really determined to erase him from history, which was hard because Caracalla still had quite an influence with his supporters even after death. Caracalla continued to have quite a bit of a problem with people who supported his now deceased brother, so, you know, it really didn't help him in the long run, as we know. Or do we know? Actually, you don't know. If you didn't study history, you don't know. After his brother's death, I mean, it was just going down and down and down. There was military campaigns, increased taxes, problems with food. His reign was marked with cruelty and paranoia, which was basically his downfall in the end. The political instability reached its peak in 217 AD, when he was assassinated by the members of, guess who? The Praetorian Guard. I mean, come on, those guys are just itching for blood of the people that they are supposed to protect, which is literally just like one guy at that point. Caracalla's abandonment of traditional ways to, you know, rule Rome and its political structure was one of the things that, you know, the Praetorian Guard could not really take. So he was at the end assassinated and seen as a tyrant, and his mother Julia, who lived in modern-day Turkey then, couldn't take it. She lost both of her sons, and she then offed herself. As I said, poor woman. My tripod died, so a small change of angle, I guess. This is real good. Hope you don't mind chewing sound. Actually, I'll just finish it. Let's talk about Macrinus for a second. Marcus Aurelius Macrinus was an actual historical figure. And guess what? He was an emperor. So if you didn't like him in the movies, which I know I didn't, you're gonna be happy how his story ends. So the real Macrinus was not training gladiators. He was far from them. He was a part of a Praetorian Guard. These guys are everywhere, am I right? So he went from a Praetorian Guard to an emperor. It's kind of like when you... I'm gonna make a very lame joke about this. It's like when you become a manager at your very first job, but nobody likes you, nobody wants you there, and you still don't know how to work the fucking coffee machine. So yeah, that's pretty much Macrinus in a nutshell. The real Macrinus is remembered in history as the first emperor to not be from any noble blood whatsoever. He came from a equestrian family. That's it. After the assassination of Caracalla in 217 AD, he grabbed power somehow. He was emperor until 218. Just 14 months. That's all that he got. Macrinus was actually found, to be a part of the conspiracy to kill Caracalla, which, I mean, it's not a surprise. He was the one who grabbed the power right after. He put in he tried to put in some new changes, but it didn't go well. He was not a good emperor. It was very brief, as I said, lasting only 14 months, and it was marked by, guess what, political and military instability. Give us something new. His main problem at that time was this guy called Elagabalus, who was a young relative of the Severan family, the Severus Snape dude. And that guy was supported by the Praetorian Guard. Shocker, am I right? Those guys support somebody? Macrinus attempted to secure the military loyalty by doing things for them. Putting policies into their favor, but it didn't really work out. And because of his lack of popularity and not knowing what the hell to do with the empire, he was overthrown and killed. Slay. Karma is a bitch. But of course, his death marked the continued struggle well into the 3rd century. So is this whole thing accurate? Somewhat. The guy who made this movie, he is very clear about not caring if it's historically accurate. But I'm very proud of what they did. I like it. They mixed up stuff to make it appealing to the masses, and I still don't know why the fuck were the sharks in the Colosseum. It is a bit of a charade as to who is supposed to be who and what, and I do understand why he made Geta and Caracalla twins, because he wanted to play onto the myth of the creation of Rome, and the story ends quite similarly to the creators of Rome. The one brother assassinates the other. Is this all historically accurate? As we have shown, or as I have shown, not really, but most of it has its stuff based in history, which is, good enough for me. And I think they did quite a justice to it. I like it. I like the movie. I like the original movie, and I like this one. This whole chaos, political struggles, and, military tensions, fight for power, all of that is straight out of Rome's messy history. And these bigger-than-life moments and goddamn sharks, well, that's just Hollywood magic. And honestly, I love it. It's just the shark constantly, I can't still get over the sharks. Anyways, if you would like to see any more historical movies, series, breakdown, please do tell me, because I actually like doing these, because I'm a nerd. I mean, come on. Look at my little collection of books. There's more. I just didn't unpack all of them. Well, I'll see you next time, and then, remember, history is one big epic story. That decides my grade. So, yeah. See you next time. Bye.